everyone, welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. President Lee Jae-myung addressed the United Nations and unveiled his vision to ease tensions with North Korea and achieve peace on the Korean Peninsula. He also said a new South Korea has returned to play a role in the international community. Also at the UN, U.S. President Donald Trump warned Russia that he's ready to impose strong economic measures over the war in Ukraine. And in a dramatic shift, he said he now believes Ukraine can win back all of its territory after meeting with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky in New York. South Korea's finance minister, Koo Yoon-chul, is set to meet U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in New York as trade negotiations remain deadlocked. Separately, Seoul's top trade negotiator Yo Han-gu also departed for Malaysia, where he will meet U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. We begin this morning with President Lee Jae-myung's speech at the UN General Assembly. He put forth a new initiative to end confrontation on the Korean Peninsula and declared Korea's complete return to the international community. Our top office correspondent Yoon Jung-min is traveling with the president and files this report from New York.
A new initiative to end confrontation on the Korean Peninsula was among the overarching themes during the first UN speech by South Korean President Lee Jae-myung.
교류, 관계 정상화, 비핵화, 즉 END를 중심으로 한 포괄적인 대화로 한반도에서의 적대와 대결의 시대를 종식하고 평화 공존과 공동 성장의 새 시대를 열어가야 합니다.
By that, he meant expanding inter-Korean exchanges, seeking efforts to advance inter-Korean relations as well as the relationship between North Korea and the U.S., while seeking realistic and rational solutions to achieve denuclearization. President Lee revisited his three-stage roadmap involving halting, reducing, and dismantling North Korea's nuclear and missile programs. He once again made it clear that Seoul is not pursuing any form of unification by absorption. And his debut on the world's major stage for multilateral diplomacy meant more than just that.
저는 오늘 세계 시민의 등불이 될 새로운 대한민국이 국제사회에 완전히 복귀했음을 당당하게 선언합니다.
He was referring to Korea's recovery from the martial law incident last December, adding that the resilience of Korea's democracy not just belongs to Korea but to the entire world, in tandem with the UN spirit. He also laid out his vision for the use of AI that can contribute to the universal values of humanity, which will also top the agenda for the UN Security Council open debate on Wednesday local time, led by a South Korean leader for the first time. During his roughly 20-minute speech on Tuesday, he mentioned Republic of Korea 33 times. And here at the UN General Assembly, the South Korean leader did not forget to mention K-culture, saying it connects people all over the world beyond borders, language, and cultural differences, stressing universal empathy and solidarity. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News, New York.
And after addressing the United Nations General Assembly, President Lee Jae-myung on Tuesday held a series of bilateral meetings with world leaders at the UN headquarters. His first meeting was with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. According to the presidential office, Guterres described South Korea as a trusted partner of the United Nations and pledged active support for the Lee administration's North Korea policy, aimed at rebuilding trust and easing military tensions. President Lee, in return, called for the UN's backing so that the two Koreas can move toward a framework of dialogue and cooperation. He also met with Uzbekistan's President Shavkat Mirziyoyev and Czech President Petr Pavel, where the focus was on strengthening bilateral cooperation. Also at the United Nations, U.S. President Donald Trump delivered a speech warning Russia that he's prepared to impose strong economic measures over the war in Ukraine. The U.S. leader also said he now believes Ukraine can regain all of its land lost to Russia in a dramatic shift in his position. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump delivered a combative speech at the United Nations General Assembly in New York on Tuesday, warning Russia that he is prepared to impose strong economic measures over the war in Ukraine.
In the event that Russia is not ready to make a deal to end the war, then the United States is fully prepared to impose a very strong round of powerful tariffs which would stop the bloodshed.
However, Trump said he wants America's allies to match those steps, especially by cutting off Russian oil purchase before Washington takes action.
China and India are the primary funders of the ongoing war by continuing to purchase Russian oil. But inexcusably, even NATO countries have not cut off much Russian energy and Russian energy products, which, as you know, I found out about 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't happy.
On the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, Trump also held talks with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. Asked whether NATO countries should shoot down Russian aircraft if they violate Allied airspace, he agreed they should be able to. The comments come as Russian drones and fighter jets have repeatedly crossed into the skies of Poland, Estonia, and other NATO members. The alliance has already held emergency consultations under Article 4 and warned Moscow that Article 5, which calls for collective defense, could be triggered. Trump later posted on Truth Social that with the European Union's support, Ukraine is in a position to fight back, reclaim its territory, and ultimately defeat Russia. He added that Washington will continue to supply NATO with weapons so that they can use them as they see fit, signaling continued indirect weapons support for Ukraine. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
So as we just heard, President Lee Jae-myung delivered a speech at the UN General Assembly and outlined his vision to achieve peace on the Korean Peninsula. For more on this, we're joined today by Professor Andrew Millard, Assistant Professor of International Relations at Taiwan National University. Professor Miller, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
So President Lee said he'll work to ease tensions with North Korea at the United Nations instead of focus on exchange normalization and denuclearization, what he called the END initiative. What's your overall assessment of the president's message last night?
So overall, the speech itself is quite a safe speech. So he mentioned, and really the key issue was that South Korea is back. So he mentioned this new South Korean Republic. He talked about South Korea now becoming a global leader on certain issues and also participating in multilateral fora to try to resolve some of these global issues such as climate change, responsible use of AI, and world peace. Now, he didn't sort of directly mention the Ukraine war. He didn't mention Gaza, Palestine, or anything like that. But towards the end, he did mention North Korea. And as you mentioned, he has now sort of unveiled this new END initiative. Now, END, exchange, normalization, denuclearization. If you think about it, really, this is just kind of a continuance of previous Korean democratic governments' sort of functionalist approaches to North Korea, trying to get this engagement and lead to long-term development of relationships, which I think is definitely the right way to go about it. However, in his speech, he did mention that we need to start looking at it more realistically. And in my opinion, this continuing talk of denuclearization, this is something that I think the South Korean government needs to move away from, because North Korea, for the past 10, 15 years, has basically made it clear they will not denuclearize. They will not freeze development or anything like that. And so when Lee Jae-myung yesterday was talking about denuclearization, I think this is only going to deter North Korea from joining any future negotiations.
I see. And like you mentioned, President Lee also said a new South Korea has returned to play a role in the global community. And he's emphasized the importance of democracy several times in his speech. So he was apparently referring to the South Korea back on track after the martial law attempt in December, especially since he was elected after a snap election in June. So what are your thoughts on this?
So again, this was quite well predicted that he would be talking about these democratic challenges and how South Korea was able to overcome its own challenges and now is sort of back on the world stage. So again, I think his key message was really South Korea is back. It's a strong democracy. He's wanting to reassure the global community that what happened last December, this was just a one-off situation. But even in those crises, South Korea is capable of overcoming these strong challenges and can therefore also, again, play a global role. Because as we see in the current sort of chaotic global situation, there are many countries which are going through some form of democratic challenge. We see in America over the past couple of weeks, there's been a lot of talk about authoritarianism and freedom of speech. In the UK, again, similar stories. Turkey, Hungary, Venezuela, various countries around the world all have sort of similar democratic challenges. And therefore, I think Lee Jae-myung's key message was South Korea has a lot of experience overcoming these. We can help other countries around the world.
I see. And tomorrow, he's also going to chair an open debate at the United Nations Security Council. Why is this so significant?
So again, he mentioned this in his speech. He brought this up. So the UN Security Council is a very powerful body. Even though it's much smaller compared to the General Assembly, this is really where they have meetings where after the meetings, action takes place. And as South Korea is now chairing the presidency for this month, which is, to be honest, really good timing, this means that South Korea can set the agenda. They're setting agendas, issues that South Korea can, in the future, play a leading role in. So I think this is really a very strategic choice that they haven't really put North Korea on the agenda. They haven't talked about issues where they don't have so much control. Instead, AI, South Korea is a leading technological country. AI is definitely an issue and a global issue that everyone is interested in, where South Korea, Lee Jae-myung can go and say, look, we're a leading country in this. In the future, we can play a major role. And also, he mentioned in his speech that at the end of next month, there will be the APEC meeting and AI. So the APEC AI initiative, he mentioned, will also be a key issue then. So he's promoting this as well.
Right, we'll have to keep a close eye on the debate tomorrow. All right, Professor Miller, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your insight, as always.
Thank you.
Thank you. The OECD has maintained its 2025 economic growth forecast for South Korea at 1%, unchanged from its June projection, according to the Ministry of Economy and Finance. The OECD's 1% growth forecast is slightly higher than projections from the South Korean government and the Bank of Korea at 0.9%, as well as KDI and the IMF at 0.8%. The OECD also projected a 2.2% growth rate for 2026. The presidential office credited the positive outlook to proactive fiscal policies and consumer stimulus measures, such as livelihood recovery consumption coupons. And as Seoul and Washington work to finalize details of their trade deal, senior officials from the two sides are set to resume tariff talks in the United States and also in Malaysia. Our Park Jun-an reports.
South Korea's Finance Minister Koo Yoon-chul is set to meet U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in New York on Wednesday to address stalled tariff negotiations. This meeting comes after a deal was made in July to lower U.S. tariffs on South Korean goods from 25% to 15%, which was tied to a pledge by Seoul to invest $350 billion in the U.S. However, some details in the deal, particularly regarding the investment package, have yet to be finalized. The U.S. is demanding that South Korea significantly increase the share of direct investment within the $350 billion commitment made to the U.S. in exchange for the implementation of a 15% tariff for South Korean automobiles. The South Korean government maintains that a $350 billion cash deal would shock the country's foreign exchange market. President Lee Jae-myung warned in an interview with Reuters last week that without a currency swap, withdrawing and investing that sum in the manner the U.S. is demanding would mean another IMF situation for South Korea, referring to the 1997 Asian financial crisis. South Korea's Trade Minister Yo Han-gu departed for Malaysia on Tuesday to attend the ASEAN Economic Ministers meeting, where he will meet U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer.
We understand the tariff challenges for our companies in sectors like semiconductors and steel, and we're working to reflect their interests. We're engaging through various channels to secure safeguards and ensure fair commercial terms.
But with the ASEAN Economic Ministers meeting the primary purpose of Yo's visit, it's believed it would be difficult for follow-up tariff negotiations to achieve meaningful progress. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
Now, on the local front, the trial of former First Lady Kim Keon Hee, who is indicted on charges of stock manipulation involving Deutsche Motors and receiving illicit funds from the Unification Church, begins on Wednesday at the Seoul Central District Court. This marks the first time in South Korea's constitutional history for a former First Lady to stand trial as a defendant. The court has decided to proceed directly to trial without a preparatory hearing and has partially approved media coverage. Images and footage of Kim seated in the defendant's seat will be released before the proceedings begin, but filming will not be allowed once the trial gets underway. Shifting gears, South Korea and Egypt celebrate 30 years of diplomatic ties this year. And in honor of the 30th anniversary, a series of events in Egypt is bringing the two nations closer through art, music, and shared heritage. Our An Sung-jin reports from Cairo.
The land of the pyramids. With over 7,000 years of history, Egypt has long stood at the crossroads of culture and commerce. This year, it hosts a unique celebration of diplomacy and cultural exchange. And here in Cairo, South Korea and Egypt are celebrating 30 years of diplomatic ties with a series of events promoting further cultural exchange. A collaborative concert between the Cairo Symphony Orchestra and Korean soprano Cho Soo-mi symbolized this friendship between the two nations, resonating with themes of unity, peace, and cooperation.
I believe that through music we can show and we can feel and we can share about our true feeling, which is like peace and take care of each other.
Those cultural ties were also shown through a special exhibition which focused on traditional Korean gift boxes. Usually made from mother-of-pearl lacquerware, the boxes are typically given as gifts, and several boxes that were on display had been given as diplomatic gifts to Egypt. The exhibition also featured other diplomatic artifacts, including gifts, official documents, and video archives that reflect the evolving cultural dialogue between the two nations.
There are actually fascinating parallels. From Korean Hanji and Egypt's ancient papyrus, this exhibition worked on bridging two distinct yet resonant traditions.
The exhibition is being held at the Museum of Islamic Art in Cairo, the largest of its kind in the world.
It's both a welcome and refreshing opportunity to spotlight Korea's connection to our region. I hope this successful collaboration leads to more Korean exhibitions here in the future.
I came today to see an exhibition that beautifully blends Egyptian and Korean cultures. It's a dynamic exhibition that mixes Islamic and Korean elements really well.
As Korea and Egypt celebrate this diplomatic milestone, the events in Cairo not only honor the past, but help build a stronger, more connected future.
While 30 years may not be long, it's been meaningful. We've built strong cooperation. And as a strategic hub, I hope more Koreans take interest in Egypt's culture and history to foster lasting economic and cultural partnerships.
안성진, Arirang News, Cairo.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. Super Typhoon Ragasa has caused a mountain lake to burst its banks in Taiwan, killing 2 and leaving dozens missing. The strongest storm of 2025 has already had a devastating impact on parts of the Philippines and is now barreling toward Hong Kong and southern China. Taiwanese authorities reported on Tuesday that Typhoon Ragasa had hit the east of the country, killing at least 2 people. Some 30 people are missing and over 20 have been injured. Over 7,000 people were evacuated and more than 11,000 households lost power. The storm had made landfall in the Philippines on Monday, killing at least 3 people, injuring at least 9, and displacing more than 17,500 residents. Now Ragasa is moving towards southern China, and authorities in Hong Kong, Guangdong, and nearby provinces are preparing for its arrival on Wednesday. In Hong Kong, the typhoon warning has been raised to the maximum level 10, while schools, flights, and public transit are shut down. Guangdong has ordered mass evacuations and Macau shut its casinos. French President Emmanuel Macron, who is visiting New York to attend the United Nations General Assembly, said if Trump wants to merit a Nobel Peace Prize, he must act to stop the war in Gaza. Speaking to France's BFM TV from New York on Tuesday, on the sidelines of this week's UN General Assembly, Macron said there's one person who holds the power to end the Gaza war, and that is the U.S. president. Macron said that unlike France, the United States supplies the weapons being used in the conflict, giving it unique leverage. He said that while Trump has stated that he wants peace, such statements are insufficient and that the Nobel Peace Prize is only possible if you stop this conflict. He also said that stopping the war must include releasing hostages held by Hamas. Claims by U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday that Tylenol use during pregnancy and early vaccination in children contribute to autism have been condemned by experts. They include an autism expert and researcher at the University of Texas at Austin who told Reuters, "We have strong evidence that acetaminophen is not causing autism." UK Health Secretary Wes Streeting joined the rebuttal, saying, "Don't pay any attention whatsoever to what Donald Trump says about medicine," noting that there is no evidence linking paracetamol use in pregnancy to autism. Streeting pointed to a major Swedish study of 2.4 million children published in 2024, which found no causal link. American Space Agency NASA announced on Tuesday during a news conference that it may resume crewed lunar missions with Artemis 2. The mission, which could take place as early as February next year, would be the first to carry astronauts to the moon in over 50 years. If safety reviews are approved, the mission will send 4 astronauts aboard the Orion spacecraft, launched by the Space Launch System rocket. This 10-day flight will orbit the moon before returning to Earth, but it will not include a landing. The trip is intended to test the systems of the rocket and spacecraft, paving the way for a future landing.
Today, we are in for another round of heavy autumn rain nationwide. The recent heavy rains are caused by a clash between 2 air masses. Cold air from the north, which recently blocked the powerful typhoons, is meeting with a warm, humid air from the south. And this is creating a moisture highway over our country, leading to these frequent and powerful downpours. Morning rain on Jeju will gradually spread across the rest of the country. And until tomorrow, we could see over 100 millimeters in the western parts of Korea. The capital region and parts of Gangwon-do province might get up to 80 millimeters. The heaviest rain is expected in the central regions from late this afternoon. Temperature-wise, Seoul will see highs going down a couple degrees with rain, topping out at 25 degrees this afternoon, but Gwangju will be much warmer at 30 degrees. Looking Looking ahead, there is more rain in the forecast in southern regions this weekend than nationwide showers on Sunday. So please keep an umbrella handy.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.